Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Stay Frosty podcast. You're here with your host, Norm. So, now today I'm going to be reading to you a chapter of my book that I'm writing. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it. Please enjoy the next 20 minutes or so with the Book of Fables, Chapter 2. The soothsayer whisked Erin away from the crowds after she had blurted out something about a book with disappearing text. They crouched in a corner of the tavern. They thought they were clearly inconspicuous, and Tome calmed himself, his rage subsiding from the little scuffle he had just endured. He looked Erin in the eyes, deep into her pale blue eyes, almost reminiscent of the sky. "Girl, repeat for me what you just said. I couldn't hear." Erin looked a bit grumpy. "To be named Girl." "The name's Erin. Nice to meet you." She held out her hand whilst pulling a face of dissatisfaction. Tome hesitated before gently holding her hand. He made sure it was a dainty handshake, as it's not normal for a man to exchange a shake with a lady. "Nice to meet you too. I go by the name Tome." "Oh, come on. Don't pretend like you made it up and live by some other mysterious guise." The corner of Tome's mouth curled into a smile. "Aren't you a bold one? Tell me what I can and can't do. Anyway, my name's Tome. Erin, tell me again, would you?" Erin nodded with a big smile, finally getting her name announced. "I had this book. Found it on a local stall. It was called The Book of Fables. I was most interested by it and was reading it late into the night. I came across this chapter, or book, which explained to me some dreadful things which might happen. Then, the text disappeared. The chapter, book, whatever, it just disappeared. And this is a problem because it was talking about real life. It was talking about our world, not just a made-up world." Tom flicked his hand up ignorantly. "Bah, it's a book of fiction. Probably just had some spell on it to scare kids, get them talking and make the author a lot of money. I've heard it all before." Erin remembered one detail which might spark something. "What about a spirit called Duckback?" Tom's eyebrow began to raise. "Ah." Tom jumped, almost in fright, even though he was crouching. "Keep your voice down, Erin. The gods might hear us. I mean, he is one of the gods. That's the ancient dialect for his name. He's the god of the dead's messenger, technically, but hearing his name is, well, a message in itself. Let's see this book, then." Erin gingerly pulled it from her satchel and presented it to Tome. My. A shadow crossed over the back of Tome and blinded Erin from the dim light of the tavern. "What have we got here? A kid in the tavern, and with none other than Tome, the nun." Tome stood up quickly, elbowing the man who was stood behind him. He grabbed Erin's hand and yanked her up, whispering, "Come, follow me now." As they raced past the stranger, Erin glimpsed a pierced eyebrow. They bailed out of the tavern. "Why are we running?" Erin asked. "Don't ask questions. That man, you know him?" Erin shook her head. "He's one of the town's guards, isn't he?" Tome half laughed, half coughed. "No, and he's not one of our friends. You might not have noticed, but he's got a tattoo on his neck. Looks like a bearded dragon. It's the emblem of a cult, but let's not get into it right now. Basically, just stay away from." The door to the tavern burst open. The coaster stood with some rage now in his eyes. Them. "Stop them!" he yelled at the townsfolk in the street as the heavens began to open. Late as it was, there were some sober people still about. They broke into a sprint, off into one of the alleyways from the main street. Erin desperately tried to keep up with Tome, despite being 10 or 15 years younger than him. He does look quite young, actually. I wonder how old he is, Erin thought. Tome looked over his shoulder every few moments to check Erin was still with him. "Where are we going?" yelled Erin, the wind breaking up her sentence. Tome yelled back, "There's somewhere safe just outside of town. There's a shortcut I know about." "Mom and Dad are going to kill me," Erin thought. They arrived in a quiet corner of town behind a few houses, rain pouring down around them. Tome checked they weren't being followed. It seemed like they'd lost their pursuers. He began hurriedly searching for something in the nearby shrubs. "God, where is it?" he said to himself. "Where's what?" There's a shortcut somewhere around here, I swear. A shortcut to where? To a safe place where we can talk. The shouting increased behind the houses and coming from the alleyway leading to the corner. Although no heads were showing by the corner in the alleyway yet, Tom kept searching under barrels now and random boxes which had been disposed of from the back of a warehouse. Erin saw 100 meters or so away a familiar face creep out from behind the corner down the alleyway. It was the cultists. He locked eyes. It was the cultist. He locked eyes with Erin and immediately paced towards her. Tom whipped around as the men behind the cultist yelled, "Erin, you search. Let me deal with them." But no, just look for a hatch, a trap door. Erin began to frantically search for some door. Is it in the town walls, or maybe is it in this, or maybe in this bush? These instructions are awful, she thought to herself. She heard a clang of steel and whipped about. Tom had a large sword in both hands, was fending off the cultist who had whipped out 2 curved blades in each hand. The cultist was going to work. The other men, however, seemed to be in some sort of daze. "Oh, you're beautiful," one of them said to thin air. Erin snorted and kept looking. "Erin!" Tom yelled as he glanced one of the cultist's blades off. "The book. What did it talk about? We're not going to the safe place first? There's no time." He ducked as both blades sailed over his head and plunged into a nearby signpost. The cultists struggled to get them out as they were now plunged deep into the woodwork. It talked about the end of the world, a return of demons. "You shouldn't let her say this," the cultist said with a smirk to Tom. Tom ignored him. "Keep talking. Things are already in motion." It spoke about the reader. It started with the reader. The cultist yanked his blades free and in a flash was on Tom again. However, Tom had gathered some strength, some mental fortitude, and quickly made a sign with his hands, some sort of magical agreement with the world, then shoved his hands into the floor. A huge brick wall shot out in front, right in front of the cultist, almost smashing him in the chin. Bloody soothsayer! They were now surrounded in the clearing by the town wall on one side and a brick wall on the other. They heard bangs on the brick wall as the other men, now free of their induced madness, were banging on the wall. It won't be long until they get something stronger to batter at this wall. "How are you doing all of this? The men were in some sort of trance. You had a sword just now, and now there's this huge wall?" "There's not buckets of time to explain right now, but I will, I promise. What you spoke about in the book, I can tell you it's true, because you mentioned Duck Bakar. It's known in the legends whenever his name is brought up, specifically in magic books like the one you found. It's bad news for us, the government, and the world. Except, well, maybe not the cultists." "Who and what are these cultists exactly?" "The man you saw who wasn't in a trance. They have some dark magic in them, and they will use it to stop us. I don't know much about this book, but I know someone who will know more." "What do you propose we do? There's clearly no exit here. Wrong corner of town, maybe?" "No. It's here somewhere. We need to get out of town and head to my friend when night falls." Boom. The brick wall shook. Tom sighed. They seemed to have got themselves a battering ram of some sort. Boom. Dust and pieces of mortar shook from the wall. "Keep looking. I remember I hid it under some turf." They desperately tried to find this exit. Boom. A brick popped out and almost hit Tom in the back of the head. "You two, stop right there," the cultist yelled, still putting up the facade that he was a town's guard. Tom looked to the sky, knowing his time was coming if they couldn't escape. His face and hair totally drenched at this point. Erin similarly was soaked, her knees covered in mud, as she darted here and there, looking over places as she had already looked. A fork of lightning shot down into the town wall, and a wooden sign which was hanging on the wall sparked into flames. They watched as the sign turned to charcoal, and its rope hangings fried up. It dropped on the floor with a clatter to reveal a tiny wooden door. By the gods, that's it! Erin grabbed the door handle and pulled, where she was expecting the forest outside of the walls. All she could see was a dank cellar, almost like an inside of a church. Tom shoved her in and followed as the men charged at them. The cultist swung at Erin's leg with one of his blades and caught her heel. She yelled as she fell into the cellar. Tom cursed and swung the door shut behind them. "It won't hold," Erin cried with tears in her eyes. Tom smirked before attending to Erin's wound. "No need for concern. That wasn't any old door. It was a one-way portal." The men looked dumbfounded, and the cultists yelled in anger. What had been the dank cellar was now the forest outside, and that door was now just a hole in the town wall. Erin's eyes took some time to adjust to the room she was arriving in, but it wasn't as she was expected. She wasn't arriving outside the walls in the forest, but coming out of a wall in what looked like an abandoned church. It's getting late, Erin began as Tome fixed up her heel with some of his remaining energy. What? Mum and Dad are probably expecting me home. Tome grabbed their shoulders with some urgency. Don't worry about them. I'll send word as soon as we're safe. I wouldn't want you or them to get in trouble with the town's guard or council. That cultist, that book, it's all bad news, and we're going to need to act as quickly as we can. All right, well, what is this place? We're clearly not just outside the town walls. This, Erin, Tome said as he dusted himself off, is my home. Temporary, of course, he said rather sheepishly at the end. We can talk in peace here, of the books, of the book, of the cultist, everything I know and everything I think I know. But to help you, that person you spoke of, Duk Bakar, is a myth, a legend, and an omen. His name is not used lightly in my circles, and when it is, chaos normally follows. So tell me, he pulled up some chairs from the corner of the pretty dusty church room. Where pews would have been was a cold, uninviting stone floor. No rugs had been put down, no sofas, no pillows, just a couple of old wooden chairs. There wasn't even a fireplace in this home. Hold on, Mr. Tome. I need to know I can trust you. What kind of soothsayer lives in an abandoned church with nothing but a couple of old wooden chairs? Tome smiled politely. How lovely of a teenager should judge my wonderful abode. Would this help? Tome clicked his fingers, and in a flash, there were suddenly bookcases full of books lining the walls, a warm, inviting fire, a lush rug right in front of it with two beautiful armchairs. She could smell an evening meal stewing in the pot on top of the oven near the back of the room. It no longer looked like a church, but a lovely hovel. Erin stood dumbfounded. How did you... Illusionary magic. Hard to learn and almost as hard to teach, but old Tome, he's still got it after all these years. That reminded Erin. How old are you, Tome? Tome smiled with a sense of endearment and stroked his short but well-kept beard. Ah, youth. Would you believe me if I said I've always lived? That I'm one of the omniscient beings of the world? Erin snorted with laughter. That's impossible. No one can live forever. No one can have always lived. When there's a will, there's a way. You remember I just mentioned illusionary magic now? Yes, but what about it? What if I'm just a spell you're saying? Like that church you saw, smelt and felt just minutes ago. Erin didn't believe this. That's a joke, right? Never mind. I'm at least 112. Erin gaped. And to prove it to you, I'll show you this. He brought out a dusty-looking passport. They used those in these lands. Tome opened it up and brought his finger down on Tome's date of birth, 11th of November, 32 YOTW. YOTW stood for Year of the World. It was now 144 YOTW. Erin shook her head in disbelief. But you're illusionary magic. You could have done that for the passport too. Oh. Tony smiled mischievously. Basically what I'm saying is, with me, you can't trust me, but at the same time, well, right now, I'm the only one you can trust. And I do know things. It's not all a lie. Like that book you found, the Book of Fables. It's a well-known deceptor tome. Normally made by tricksters, mages that play with illusionary arts. But they normally use their deceptor tomes to pickpocket whilst the readers are otherwise engaged. This book, however, it was just on some person's stool, unread. Well, I don't know if it was unread, do I? But that's the trick of these books. Their wonder and amazement is in the disappearing of their stories. They only disappear once, and only when they are read. I'd be highly surprised if the purchaser had never read them, and if the person running the store was a trickster, they would have tried something on you to get more out of you. Hell, you said you got this for free. Aye, free. Unread, with a story about Duk Bakar. Yes, and you said when we were cornered that he is returning. That's never a good sign. The town isn't safe. We must go visit my old friend. He lives quite a few miles from here, but first we must rest. As Erin prepared to sleep, Tome tied a small scroll to one of his carrier pigeons, whispered to it where Erin's parents lived, and let it fly. Be quick, little one. As the night drew in, Erin's mind was clouded in darkness. Another dream, to be sure, but this time something more. She was in a ring of hooded figures. They were quietly chanting something under their breath. Udus, Regnis, Bacchus, they kept repeating. Erin felt uneasy and quite scared. From the dark ceiling above her, a shadowy mask fell. It had red glowing eyes and a crooked red smile. It chuckled in a deep voice. Little one, You have been chosen. By who? Who are you? Leave me alone. The mask cackled. The Book of Fables never lies. We are your true mentors, little one. We'll guide you as best we can. A light fell on the mask. In the light, it was a pale, beautiful woman with long auburn hair. We take refuge in the dark, but we guide you in the light. The mask opened her mouth, and Erin's mind could hear only a high-pitched screaming. Images flashed in her mind. A cultist outside her parents' home, her brother kicking and screaming, fire scorching, her father begging on his knees, a blade in the moonlight, blood splattering. Erin screamed. Cultists circled her family, and the cultist she knew looked her dead in the eyes. Erin jerked awake, expecting to be at home, about to be killed by the cultists. But no, she was in Tome's home. Fire now just a smouldering lump of ash. Tome? She called out. Tome was in his armchair, but there was no response. She rolled out of her makeshift bed and walked over. Tome. He wasn't asleep, but looking distantly into the ashes. Are you okay? After a minute of silence, he stirred. Oh, sorry, I was just appreciating the peacefulness here. It won't be long now until that's all gone. I think it might be too late. Erin had tears welling in her eyes. I had a horrible dream. I sent word to your family as you were going to bed. It's just a dream. No, Tommy, it was real. The book chose me, and those men, those cultists, they know. Tome shook his head in surprise. There's no way. They're not that smart. This thing in my dream, it was a mask. It told me this. A mask? How queer. I need to go home now. No, it's too dangerous. Anyway, we need to visit that friend of mine. Tone began to ramble on and looked back at the ashes. He's very knowledgeable about these things. I have but a limited knowledge on it. You'll be safer with me and him. You can help us. We can help you. Your family will be safe. As I said, it was just a dream. The book. He turned back to where Erin had been standing. She was gone. He rolled his eyes. Of course, impatient as expected. Oh, Catherine, what have you got me into? And that's the end of chapter 2. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, guys, stay frosty.